Coverage of the 109th Indianapolis 500 is brought to you by Qapital. One of the most exciting days at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that I've personally experienced that I can remember was the first day of qualifying here at the 109th Indianapolis 500. We got 80s music blaring. Today was a banger. We're playing the bangers. It's absolutely awesome. And if you enjoy coverage of the Indianapolis 500 and IndyCar racing and pretty much everything else in motorsports, you are in the right place. So subscribe if you have not already. Go down there. Leave me a like as well. It's free to do any and all of those things, as well as leave me a comment. We have so much stuff to talk about. I guess I'll start with this, a general statement. If you didn't like today, and I get it, there's a whole lot of criticisms about the format and, it's probably too compressed. I've made those before. But when you have a day like this that is this exciting, this much drama, this many unexpected twists and turns, it was just Indy at its very best. We've got so much to talk about. By the way, shout out to my 1.5-year-old niece. I love you so much, and I'm so glad I got to see you at the racetrack today. That just made my day. But someone who didn't really have a made day was for sure Marcus Armstrong in the morning warm-up. I mean, this is the worst case scenario. Marcus Armstrong lost control going into turn number 1, backed the car heavily into the wall, slid across the track into the turn 2 wall. We were very concerned about the health and safety of Marcus Armstrong, but he was eventually seen, released, and cleared to drive. The Meyer-Shank Racing team did an absolutely unbelievable job. That chassis was completely written off. They had to press a road course car into service, the car that they were planning on racing at Detroit in 2 weeks' time. That car prepared in the garage, totally new. And then got out onto the racetrack for a couple of qualification attempts today. But Marcus Armstrong does not find himself in the show as we stand right now. His fastest average speed just over 227 miles an hour. But what a huge testament to the Meyer-Shank Racing team, to IndyCar Medical, to Marcus Armstrong himself. I mean, I'm going to say this about 3 different drivers in this video, but he completely let his nuts hang out today. I mean, what a gutsy performance by Marcus. And we got to talk to him in the post-race press conference. He mentioned that his first run he had no telemetry, and as you'll find out, he had no telemetry on his second run. It was total fear, or not total fear, it was a total lack of fear. It was total trust in the race car and the race team. This is an incredible quote from Marcus Armstrong. I want you to listen to this.
Well, just like this morning, my references were based off of yesterday with a different wind, and this morning when I went out, typically you have a different balance to what you have when you put the Q mix and you have a whole lot more horsepower. So this morning's balance caught me by surprise massively, so I was kind of a little bit lost on that warm-up lap when I just drove now, and I'm also cognizant of how difficult it is to get these cars into the right window. Even a bit of tape on the uprights can affect the aero balance significantly. So with all these things not being as the other car, we don't really know where we are in terms of a balance window. And you don't really find out about it until you're midway through the corner. So, my plan was just to take it easy on the first lap, just to see where the balance was. Adjust from there with my tools. My weight jacker actually wasn't working, so I only had my bars. And then hopefully for the second run, we would have been able to modify the ride heights and all of that, but we didn't have any data, so we just sent it with the same car.
So you made that improvement from 26 to 29 just based on feel? I mean, to kind of describe the difference between the first run and the second run, and then kind of your confidence level going into tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my mindset was if the car is good enough to do it, then I'm not going to be the reason that we're not going to get through today. So, I threw caution to the wind, if that's the right expression, and just went flat. Hopefully the balance was there. It was. And but ultimately wasn't quick enough. So we'll come back tomorrow.
And speaking of drivers who just did one of the most heroic things I've ever seen in racing, period, is our boy Colton Herta. An unbelievable crash in turn number one. Very similar to one, or at least looked somewhat similar to one he had in 2022. Lost control of the car. The car got upside down. It hit the turn two wall upside down. Again, much like with Marcus Armstrong, we were so concerned about the health and safety of Colton Herta, but he got out of the race car on his own power, was checked, cleared, and released to drive. And then the work began. That particular chassis completely written off, much like Marcus Armstrong's. A backup Speedway car was pressed into service. Colton got it out onto the racetrack, and on the very first run, went over 230 miles per hour in an average speed and qualified for the 109th Indianapolis 500. In terms of the special things that we see here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I think we really need to make sure that we recognize that Colton Herta has done something incredibly special today. Yes, it's going to be a very difficult uphill battle for him in the race. There's no doubt about it. But today, he was the hero. And I asked him about that because, of course, the comparisons to 2022 have been strong. At that point, it was a road course car that had to be pressed into service. This car, a speedway car. What did Colton Herta learn from 2022 that he could bring into 2025 to have a shot at the Indy 500 victory still?
I hope so. I'm less worried about that, just because the window for margin and qualifying is so small because you're just so on top of the track. Any little problem or any little change makes a huge difference. Whereas the race car, you can mess up a little bit more on balance and still make a good day of it. The problem in 22 is we had the floor that was stalling. So, we were only running like 205 in the race, and eventually IndyCar pulled the plug on us. So I don't think that we'll have that issue again. I think we learned a lot from that situation. That was a terrible few days for us. So yeah, I think there is a lot put in place to be able to understand a little bit more a lot of the underwings and front rear wings that we bring to the race in case we have problems like this, which we've had every year basically at Andretti.
Just like the Indy 500 isn't won in a single lap, building wealth takes strategy and the right team. With Qapital's automated savings tools, you'll navigate every turn of your money journey and race towards your goals faster. Whether you're saving for a new car, vacation, or building an emergency fund, Qapital puts money management strategies in your pocket. Download Qapital today at qapital.com/DavidLand. That's QAPITAL.com/DavidLand.
So we did lock some spots into the Indianapolis 500 today, and we will start with them, starting with row 5. On the inside is Connor Daly, who actually had a run disallowed. His first run of the day was disallowed, but he came back out late in the day, actually the final run of the day at 231.7 miles an hour, and he was able to almost get into the Fast 12, but not quite. 13th position inside of row 5 for Connor Daly. In the center is Alexander Rossi, who did copious amounts of running today, but could not find speed any higher than 231.7 miles an hour. And another driver who let his nuts hang today was Mr. Kyffin Simpson. A backup car, a new engine, so many unknowns. And yet Kyffin Simpson very nearly at times looked like he was going to get in the Fast 12. An early draw, I think, definitely saved him a lot, but there's no doubt about it. He showed some gusto getting out there and qualifying in the 15th spot. Row number 6, Ed Carpenter on the inside, found speed at times. Looks like the Ed Carpenter cars are much stronger than they were last year as a whole group, not just Renus VK, so that looks good for Ed. Santino Ferrucci at times looked like he might be able to get into the Fast 12. He's definitely done a very good job to get that car up to speed after there was times this week where we thought he was going to be a bump contender. That ends up not being the case. He's in the middle of row number 6. And on the outside is Devlin DeFrancesco, a great run for the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team today. We'll touch on that in much more detail later on. Row number 7, on the inside is Stingray Robb. Both Juncos Hollinger cars safely in the field on day one. That's what you want to see when you are a team. Christian Rasmussen, the slowest of the Ed Carpenter racing machines, but we know he always races well. And fear no more, NASCAR fans. Kyle Larson has qualified for the 109th Indianapolis 500. No last row shootout for him. It was a secondary run. His first run very conservative, but the second one very solidly placed him in the field at 231 miles an hour. Row number 8 on the inside, Louis Foster for Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. He ran a couple of times today, didn't quite find the massive speed he needed to really compete. Callum Ilott and the resurgent, very, very fast, unexpectedly fast, I would say, Prema team in 23rd. And Elio Castroneves, who just had a lousy day today. It began with him actually failing technical inspection and having to forfeit his first guaranteed qualifying attempt. You want to talk about a disappointment? Look on the inside of row number 9, Kyle Kirkwood, a driver who we all thought was going to be a pole contender, and he will roll off 25th. In the center of row number 9 is Nolan Siegel for Arrow McLaren. He was a driver that might have been borderline in some situations, but he got the number 6 Arrow McLaren machine into the show and qualifies for his first Indianapolis 500. And on the outside is Ryan Hunter-Reay, the 2014 winner. It was a little bit touch and go, but he improved on a late day run at 230 miles an hour to safely place that car in the show. And in row 10, Jack Harvey, the other Dreyer Reinbold entry. He's been the subject of bump day dramatics in the past, not this year for Jack Harvey. Colton Herta, what else can you say about this guy? I mean, it was just an unbelievable day, an unbelievable amount of grit from Colton Herta. And Graham Rahal qualifying for the Indianapolis 500 on the first day for the first time in the last 4 years. That has got to be so gratifying. We will talk about Graham in much more detail later on today. And now we need to take a look at the battle for the Fast 12. These are the first 4 rows of the grid. They're locked into position, but we don't know exactly what order they will roll off in. Alex Palou is the provisional pole sitter at 233.0 miles an hour. That will apply to all of the current provisional front row starters. Scott McLaughlin in the center did 1 run today, and that was all he needed. Ditto for Joseph Newgarden. 3 cars at 233 miles an hour at the end of the first day. On the inside of row number 2, provisionally, is Pato Award at 232.8 miles an hour. That was a super strong run for Pato. Scott Dixon in the center. You got to think that Scott's going to show up tomorrow and post a big speed. He always seems to, but right now Alex Palou has a little more pace over him. And Robert Schwartzman, who becomes the first Israeli-born driver to qualify for the Indianapolis 500. Prema in the top, not only the top 12, but provisionally in the Fast 6. Robert Schwartzman is absolutely legit. The kid is a megastar here at the Indianapolis 500, at least at the beginning of the month. David Malukas for AJ Foyt Racing gets that team represented in the Fast 12. That was great. David Malukas has really gotten to grips with his machine, and it's starting to show. Felix Rosenquist, the only representative of the Meyer Shank Racing team in position 8 in the Fast 12, and Takuma Sato putting a Rahal car into the Fast 12 once again. Will Power on the inside provisionally of row number 4. He just doesn't seem to have the pace of his other 2 teammates. Marcus Ericsson was pretty unhappy with his first run, but ultimately it was what got him into the Fast 12 in P11. And Christian Lundgaard, a gritty performance to get into the Fast 12 after being fairly off the pace throughout the month. And then we get into the fear factor, the bottom 4. And these are the drivers who will race for the final 3 spots in the Indianapolis 500 tomorrow. Marco Andretti, he finds himself in this position, potentially bumped for the first time since 2011, but he should, keyword should, get in the field tomorrow. He's got 230 mile an hour speed. A driver who we're not sure necessarily has 230 mile per hour speed is Rinus VK, just behind him. But Rinus looks decent right now. Decent, I say. Marcus Armstrong in a backup machine, found speed, did some laps at 229 miles an hour today. We expect once they get telemetry back on that race car, get the setup dialed in, we think that's going to be strong enough. And Jacob Abel right now, and we'll talk about him in just a second, right now on the outside looking in. And I mentioned Marcus Ericsson, and we need to mention some Indy 500 history. Marcus Ericsson, the first Indianapolis 500 qualifier to have a power unit that is partially electrified. That will go down in history, I think, at some point. Maybe we'll just say that that's the history for now. first electrified machine to qualify for the Indianapolis 500, the number 28 machine of former winner Marcus Ericsson. And I'm going to say something controversial. I'm a little bit scared of this one, boys and girls and everybody. I think the hybrid's cool. I think so. We know the issue with it on the road courses and the street courses, but here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, what else could you ask for? Like, it's added an extra element of excitement from the perspective of the driving talent of the drivers. Not only the fact that they have to manage something else, the drivers and the teams have to manage something else that can make them go faster if managed correctly. The weight has made the cars more difficult to drive, which everybody seems to want until it actually happens, and then they all complain about it. And I think today wouldn't have been nearly as interesting if you hadn't had the change of the race cars, something that the teams have to figure out. And granted, it's a spec part, and eventually they're all going to figure out the most efficient way to do this, and then it'll probably get boring. So hopefully we'll see hybrid development as this dinosaur of a chassis continues to develop, and hopefully with the next generation of IndyCar, we'll see more power and more opportunities for the teams to screw up, because I think that's where the drama in this comes from. We didn't have an easy bump until today, and I still don't think we have an easy bump tomorrow, despite the fact that there's one car very much off the pace. And a lot of that has to be, we blame the hybrid for a lot of things. I'm going to give the hybrid a lot of credit. Today wouldn't have been nearly exciting without it. There's no doubt about it. All right, let's talk about the bump. The easy bump, as I just contradict myself, is Jacob Abel. He's just, something is dramatically wrong with that machine right now, and you're just not going to find 3 miles an hour overnight, and that should frighten anybody who's a fan of Jacob Abel. There's no doubt about it, because he is in big trouble right now, at least as we stand here on the evening of the first day of qualifying. If I had to guess it, it's probably going to be Marco Andretti in the 31st spot, Vernius VK in 32nd, and then Marcus Armstrong completing the final row of the grid, unless something major changes. I think Marcus Armstrong, the fact that he didn't have telemetry and did 229 miles an hour just on feel, that says to me that road course car, while it might not be the 233 mile an hour machine that his previous machine was, this is more than an efficient enough machine to get him into the Indianapolis 500. And ironically enough, with all the hype about maybe a resurgence of Honda, it's going to be a Honda that goes home. There are no Chevys in the bottom four, and really, if you look at it, the closest one that would have gotten out would have been Jack Harvey, and there were still two Hondas in between that. So very interesting in terms of the manufacturer battle. Graham Rahal, man, what a gratifying day for the entire Rahal team. The fact that the number 15 car gets in on the first day, they don't have to worry about it. They have a day to rest for the first time in 3 years here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The jubilation on that team, the sense of accomplishment that they got in, it's just so nice to see Graham get in and not have to deal with this. Yes, there was a little bit of that, quote-unquote bump day drama today. There's no doubt about it that Graham had to sit through the fact that Marco Andretti took a whole bunch of different shots at him and couldn't bump him out of the field. And you talk about the regal names at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it's probably not the Rahal-Andretti battle that we dreamed about in 2008, but it's no less compelling to see an Andretti trying to knock a Rahal out of the field. I think that was pretty cool. We're super happy for Graham that he got in. In fact, we talk about the bottom row shootout. We talk about all that stuff. The first time that I can remember in several years that there has not been a single representative of the Rahal team in the last row shootout. Great for that team. Pole position tomorrow. I mean, everybody's pretty well established that Scott McLaughlin has one of the fastest cars here on the grounds. There's no doubt about it. It's the car that was on the pole position last year. Same driver, same car, same team, same. He looked super strong today. Went out once in the heat of the day and went second fastest. It's hard to argue against that. If I'm going to make an argument against that, it's Alex Palou. Super ridiculously consistent. Didn't run all that much later than Scott McLaughlin, so very similar conditions faster speed. We'll see. I think the other thing, too, that I would say between McLaughlin and Palou is that it looked like McLaughlin had to almost rely on his hybrid a little bit more to get the speed out of the car versus Palou, where it just seemed like it was just more efficiently managed. So I'm kind of curious to see how tomorrow plays out, if there are any games left to play between Penske and Ganassi. I expect it will be a Penske or Ganassi car on the pole position tomorrow. I just don't think we're going to end up with a Robert Schwartzman pole, although that would be really cool. And I should give a shout out to that kid because, again, I ripped Prema for the first day just not being prepared, and I said something to the effect of, if you don't come to Indy with a loaded gun, you're going to get shot. Well, as it turns out, Robert Schwartzman's doing a lot of shooting right now, and the fact that that kid went out and did 2:33 for 2 laps, averaged 232 miles an hour, would have been in the Fast Six had we officially qualified today. It's insane. Now, is he going to race all that well? Probably not. No, rookies don't typically win the Indy 500. It's an oddity when it does happen. But I certainly think you can make a very strong case that he is already very much the Rookie of the Year favorite, and it's not even close. Let's talk about the history segment today, because you might have noticed Daniel John Sullivan III over my shoulder. And it's been 40 years since the 1985 Indianapolis 500. And thanks to Gutswear.com for sponsoring this segment. They have we love Gutswear.com. They're giving us a little honky honk. Gutswear.com is where you can get your shirts, your hats, your die cast. You can go to their trailer here in the Speedway and check them out. It's a good place to go. It's going to be better, I think, later on in the month. Wink, wink. So let's take a retrospective back at the Spin and Win, one of the most famous Indy 500 moments of all time.
There's cool, there's cold, and then there's Daniel John Sullivan III. Try to find a picture of Danny that doesn't look straight out of Top Gun. The aviators, the fire suit, and the ice-cold Miller Beer Turbo V8 Cosworth March Indy car. Danny Sullivan was the epitome of 80s racing. In 1985, the 200-mile-per-hour era was in full swing. Ground effects, however, were not a perfected science, so wheel-to-wheel racing was a very risky business. The teams had a choice of 3 different chassis that year: March and Lola based out of the UK, and Dan Gurney's Eagle chassis made in the US. The March was the gold standard of the era, making up 24 of the 33 qualified cars. The engines were another variable, the Cosworth DFX being the choice, along with a spattering of Chevrolets and 2 Buick stock block B6s. The Buicks proved to be the powerhouses of qualifying, with the Buick-powered cars of Pancho Carter and Scott Brayton starting first and second. The typically calculating Bobby Rahal made a daring move from third place to start the race as he chopped down in front of the Buicks. By lap 20, both of the Buicks were out of the race, and Mario Andretti had moved into the lead. From that point forward, it was Andretti in command, with Emerson Fittipaldi, Tom Sneva, and Danny Sullivan in pursuit. Just past the halfway point of the race, a battle for the lead ensued. It was the new guard versus the old guard. Sullivan versus Andretti. On lap 120, Sullivan drafted up behind Mario on the front stretch and pulled out to pass. When they entered turn 1, they were dead even. Then a wiggle and a snap. Danny spun out directly in front of Mario. Lost in a cloud of smoke, Andretti locked his brakes, and miraculously, Sullivan's car didn't collect the wall or his competitor. Aside from flat-spotted tires, both drivers were unscathed.
Well, I wish I could take the credit, Sam, and say that I was controlling it. I was just holding on, and that was my fault. We just had a little miscommunication, and I thought it was right towards the end of the race, and I needed to get by Mario.
After immediately making pit stops, both of the combatants returned to the race. A few laps later, lightning nearly struck twice as Howdy Holmes and Rich Vogler touched and crashed directly in front of Mario and Sullivan. Once again, both avoided disaster. The dogfight resumed, Andretti leading, Sullivan chasing. Always cool under the collar, Danny wasn't feeling too gun-shy after his first failed pass attempt, and just 20 laps later on lap 140, he tried the exact same move in the same corner again. This time, the young Charger made it stick. The momentum had shifted, and Sullivan was in command through the checkered flag. His unprecedented victory cemented the Spin and Win as one of the greatest moments in Indy 500 lore. Sullivan, forever a legend of the Speedway.
And I hate to say this because, of course, we leave with a Miller High Life car in the background, a history segment about the Miller High Life car, and then we talk about the potentiality of the Miller High Life car going home tomorrow in the hands of Jacob Abel. Are there going to be surprises tomorrow? Will we see a surprise pole sitter? Will one of the 3 drivers not named Jacob Abel be bumped from the starting field tomorrow? Maybe. Certainly a discussion that I'd like to see started in the comments. But regardless of what happens tomorrow, we'll be here. We'll be covering it. We're going to have a full recap of the day, and we can't wait to see you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. One of the most exciting days at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway I can remember. Thanks for being there with me, and we'll see you in the next video.